Word up, the incomparable Matthew Markoff.
What's up?
What's up, man?
I'm great. Great day.
Yeah, man. Thanks for taking the time, man.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, man. You're one of the craftiest, one of the most innovative business minds in music, and I wanted to touch base with you, ask you about some of your new endeavors that you're participating in, but also really want to get into the history of how you got into brokering verses.
It started from when I was an artist. I started rapping in the late 90s. Had my first tape come out around 98. And when I was doing my album called Snakes in the Garden of 80 in 2003, that was a very successful project for me. I started doing live shows and met, that's when I was introduced to Wu-Tang. I was an opener in Indianapolis on a tour run that had like Raekwon on it, and Inspector Deck and Priest and Law the Dark Man and Capadonna and Remedy, and I think Inspector Deck. And their tour manager for that tour really took a liking to me and offered for me to come on and finish like other dates on the tour with them. And I was in college, and I was sure, whatever I have to do. Like, you know, the whole point was, you know, my family was cool with it as long as I wasn't missing classes. And I would do shit like drive from Indianapolis to like New York for a show, do my set, like maybe sell some merch, politic with the guys for a minute, and drive back to make sure I made like a 9 in the morning class. Like I was all wherever they could work me in is what shows I'd pick up. So I did that tour, then various dates with like Jizza, various dates with RZA, with Method Man, all from the same like booking agency and tour management. And when I was starting to work on my next project, The 11th Hour, is when I finally wanted to put money into features. Everything I had done for like 7 years leading up to that was all just me and networking with like local producers and producers on the internet and stuff like that. And I realized that a lot of, not to say they don't care, but there's more ancillary money when you do verses, when it's like big, when it's mainstream, when it's bigger. You know, artists can get their upfront fee, artists can get their requisite like publishing share, artists can get their requisite royalty split. And I noticed that a lot of the hip hop guys weren't necessarily keen or too like, I guess it wasn't too important for them to get publishing and royalties after just like, what can you give me right now? So I caught a lot of flack for it when I started buying verses from artists, you know, for my projects dating back to 03, 04. The first features I ever did were featured on my album, The 11th Hour, with Priest, with Rhymefest, with Dreddy Kruger, with Desert Ease, with the likes, and, you know, just took off from there. And then after that, I started working as an A&R, and the first project out the gate was Wu-Tang Meets the Indie Culture, and that's a perfect example. That is a project that's just feature riddled. The whole thing is features, whether it's members of Wu-Tang Clan, whether it's members of underground hip hop's elite. That's how we structured that project. So if it was something that I was in charge of as an A&R, or if it was something that I was in charge of as the executive, I was the one that was also handling A&R administration, which is the legal sign-offs of feature artists, which is legal sign-offs of producers, publishing splits. So if the money was coming out of my pocket, then the sign-off is attributed to Holy Toledo Productions, which I'm the president of the company. And then if I had to transfer certain rights, then I would. Like, you know, maybe it's I'm paying them, but it's with your money and you're hiring me to fund a project. And I might still maintain a certain level of ownership over the pieces of the record. So it came down to one or two things. One, the artist is always happy when I hit them up to get upfront money. I mean, you know, like everyone likes to be paid for their job. And it doesn't matter that people are like, oh, well, you pay for all this. They don't respect you or whatever. It's like, I could care less, because if you're getting paid, that means I'm getting paid too. So win-win. Like you could talk as much shit about me as you'd like. And as long as there's still a check in it for us, chances are I'm going to give you 2 thumbs up both times. So there's artists that like it because there's always a check associated to it, whether I'm buying the verse from you or whether I'm licensing. You know, if I do a license placement, 9 times out of 10, I have 100% ownership right to do the license. If there is any kind of wavering on the ownership, then that means the artist is also getting a percentage of the fee, plus me, plus any of my partners attributed to the sale. So again, artists like it because it's constant revenue stream. Then you have certain artists that I've worked with that have asked specifically not to be included on my licensing catalog because they feel it takes away from the artistic integrity of the work. And I totally agree with them. The licensing catalog is set up for several different myriads of artists. One, your upcoming artist that wants to do big stuff and be seen on a large scale that doesn't necessarily have the big budget to do so. So say I own a 2 Chainz verse, and 2 Chainz currently charges $100,000. But I got one when he was Titty Boy, and I have the authorization, and I paid, say $5,000 then. Well, I might have the ability to license that multiple times to see a return on my investment. So say in paperwork, it might give me unlimited rights to assign and transfer. It might have a limit, like you could license a certain piece of material 5 times, 10 times. Depending on how big the artist is, you might see various limitations in their sign off to me. The average artist, no limitation. So I could take a Killer Priest verse if I wanted to and license it 100 times, if the demand was there. So there's that. It benefits upcoming artists with minimal budgets. I have big clients that are in the EDM world, in the dubstep world, in that electronic genre of music, because their fans are in it for the instrumentation. When they hear a track that has a famous rapper on it, they're not concerned with, was this verse previously released? Is this something that was pre-recorded, previously released, whatever? So it's new to them. It draws a thin line with the rap community because they're like, oh, I recognize that verse from this other song. And that's when you get into the artistic integrity. Some of the artists are just like, look, perhaps I'd rather you pay me less in the future if it meant that there was no licensing rights attached to, what I'm doing for you. And I respect those artists too. And we still give them their business because it's like, I need something from them. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having the conversation to begin with. But the licensing thing is great for upcoming artists making their albums or their mixtapes, their singles. It's great in the electronic world. And it's great when you run a record label and you're maintaining a catalog, because back in the 90s, early 2000s, labels like Baby Grand or Nature Sounds or Fat Beats or whoever it might be used to have you turn in the whole shebang. So it's not just here's the master to my album. It is here's the acapellas. It is here's the instrumentals. Here's the cleans. And that's what they would have on file, whether it was a master ownership deal or whether it was a content license deal. And that's what really sparked the idea for me to start the licensing business. Was I'm going to be working on lots of projects, whether as an artist or an A&R. I'm not looking at my career as a quick lick, as some people do. And that's actually huge in the event production space. Where people just want to, promote fraudulent shows and come up on whatever money and kind of lickety split. I've been in the game for 20 plus years and I intend on sticking around for 20 more. And this is just something great because now as we're moving from, you're like, I'm a straight money guy. Talk to me in debit cards, credit cards, PayPals, or cash. This whole Bitcoin thing and cryptocurrency is 100% new to me. And this gives me a chance to kind of see how people value the music stems in a newfound currency. So while I chose to get paid in cash money, how they are going to broker the deal and build this community called Versebooks will be based off cryptocurrencies.
Well, before we get to Versebooks, I think, just the whole model itself is really interesting. And I think you pointed out, one of the reasons why it's also eyebrow raising, you're brokering verses that you could use more than once. I mean, what was the first deal that you brokered where the artists got upset or had friction?
I don't necessarily can pinpoint the first one, but we get the complaints constantly. And how we've tried to combat that all these years is, say you're a potential client, you see me advertise the licensing services, or we do 3 things. Verse licensing, I own a catalog of unreleased material. People are like, what does that mean? Usually when an artist goes to record their album, they might do 50 or more songs. And only 15 of those or less is going to make the cut for the album. The rest may be found on promotional leaks, on mixtapes, on EPs, but then there's this just extra. And I'm someone that will come in and buy the rights to the extra. So those are unreleased exclusives. Then we have custom original exclusives, which are, hey, M-80, I know you're connected to Snoop. I want Snoop to do a 16 on the song for me. I got X amount of money. Can you make it happen? I contact Snoop's management. This, lay it out. Here's the here's the instrumental. Here's the notes. Usually, the bigger the artist, they prefer it be a reference with the open space, a 16, an 8 for the hook, whatever. And then we do the paperwork from there. So I created a PDF. So anyone that inquires, we send them the PDF first as protocol. Like, I don't do any business with anyone that hasn't first got this PDF. So in the PDF, it explains what a license is. It explains what an unreleased exclusive is. It explains what a custom exclusive is. So in the license parameters, this is a piece of previously recorded material. This previously recorded material has also been previously released. Myself, Matthew Markoff of Holy Twitter Productions, or one of my 3 or 4 additional partners, and it lists who they are, owns the rights to this specific piece of material to therefore be able to license it to you. Here is, please notice the going rates for one of these artists of interest to you and the license fee. Then for reference of what this person would cost if it was an exclusive done custom for you, please scroll down, 3 or 4 pages to that list. That's all the information we can give them. That's doing our due diligence. That's good faith. Then we get people that buy it like, oh man, I made something like, I can't believe it was that cheap. Come back to us and say they didn't read the PDF. Sorry. Once the music changes hands, it's audible. It's not a tangible, you bought a sandwich. Thank you for your money. Here's your sandwich. I hand it to you. It's an intangible good. So we can't refund their money. We can't, it's like, I'm sorry. Maybe if we feel for you, we'll give you some kind of credit towards a future purchase. But we provide that PDF to ensure that that all the fuckery is done away with, that you understand what you're buying, you understand the price points, and we take it from there. Without knowing the client, the first hiccup was probably around 2007, 2008, where to their credit, that was before I started the PDF. It was just like, hey, I got, like, people used to just write me like, you work with Wu-Tang, can I get a verse from Master Killer? Okay, cool. I need $5,000. Ooh, well, I don't have $5,000, but I got 500. Okay, well, at 500, I can offer you a license instead of an exclusive. Have at it. And then it's up to them to ask the questions on what that is or what that means, versus them just hearing that I'm naming a price point that's advantageous to their pockets.
How many artists would you say you have rights to verses?
In my deal with Versebooks, I'm giving them, it's, I think, 360 to 400 verses from 120 to 150 unique artists.
Right up, that's substantial.
Yeah.
So the Versebooks announcement came out on March 9th. Rest in peace, Notorious B.I.G.
And you know what today is?
Today is St. Patrick's Day.
Today's Sean Price's birthday.
Oh, wow. Rest in peace to Sean Price. Yeah, big rest in peace.
This is monumental because I'm being interviewed by you on Sean P's birthday. And this Versebooks announcements was done on the passing of Biggie.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to go see City of Lies in the movie theater. You're coming with me.
Yeah, let's definitely do it. Let's definitely do it. I'll be masked
I'm renting out a whole theater.
All masked up. Oh, good. Even better.
Yeah, I'm renting a theater. They said you can bring 20 people. That way it's socially distanced.
Nice.
Yep.
So the Versebook announcement talked about the platform that was created. You're partnering with another company, and the transactions will be registered through the blockchain. Is that correct? Is there any more details you want to
Yes. So my fee was paid separately. I don't own stock. I don't own cryptocurrencies. I can tell you the exact dollar amount I have invested into businesses across the United States of America, because I've always been fortunate enough where it was like, I want to help my friends win in their business. Mm-hmm. So instead of having stock, and maybe one day I'll switch over to having some kind of footprint in the crypto gang, I guess. But I have money invested into several of my friends' record labels, into their marijuana endeavors, into their studios, into their clothing brands, into their restaurants. And that makes me feel better at the end of the day. Sometimes the returns are greater, sometimes they're less, but it's priceless to be like, I'm helping one of my people come up.
Right. So for people who don't understand the Versebooks, artists who are interested in acquiring a verse or licensing a verse, this is a marketplace, a digital marketplace that makes that transaction easier.
Correct.
Is that fair to say?
So like people can only get business from me. Like I don't maintain a website with this. I am going to launch a website for like the admin side of my business. So when an artist needs like a guest artist memorandum or a producer needs a production memo sign off when they're selling a track, whether I'm awake or not, here's my hub. So we're working on that right now. But the Versebooks is a full service site that, you know, they will have contracts ready to be issued. They can be like, you know, I guess modified as need be, like during normal business hours. But someone might be in a studio at 2 a.m. and be like, damn, I really wish I had a Cameron verse on this song. Let me hit Versebooks, see what they got. So that's the ease of it. It gives it a greater convenience than working with me. And, you know, I'm sometimes easy to deal with. I'm sometimes not easy to deal with. It's always based on my mood of the day. I'm having a really good day today. So it's like, you know, anyone who needs anything, hey, man, you know, a phone call away. But until Versebooks makes the transition, I will continue, me and my partner, Adrian, will continue to run our operation as always. So we're running our promos. Here's the JPEG with all the artists on it. We'll be sending out the email blast. And then like Versebooks will be looped in on all the deals we broker from now until their system is set up, how they want it. Then once their system is how they want it, Anno and I will stay on for a period of 5 years and act as the face, you know, like people trust me in the business. I went to law school, graduated top 10% of my class. Therefore, they know, okay, clearly his contracts are good money. When we do deals for exclusive verses, people feel comfortable handing me 10 grand, 40 grand, 100 grand, whatever it is for a particular client, because in the contracts, I'm the one that's on the chain for their money and files. So, you know, knock on wood, I've never had a circumstance where someone paid me for something and they didn't get what they paid for. But in the event that happened, like say you paid 20 grand for a client and didn't get your track, I'm the one responsible contractually for your money. So artists like that safety net when they've dealt with so much shadiness and just bullshit in the rap industry. Like, you know, a contract is only as good as the people signing it. And I like to think of myself as a pretty quality human being, and therefore more business comes my way. So to make it worthwhile for Versebooks, I offered to stay on before they even asked, because it would be very unfortunate for this announcement to be like, yeah, I got all this money, whoop-de-doo, and then they weren't able to make anything from it. My name is associated to the quality, to the satisfaction between client and getting their rights.
I always think about and admire the level of craftiness you have in some of your endeavors that, you know, interest you. You know, you made a real play to acquire Once Upon a Time in Shaolin.
Yes.
I think we talked about that one on the All Out show.
Yes, we did.
But what stood in the way? Why were you not able to complete that transaction?
The timeline, as I remember, was Martin Shkreli had me send in financial statements. They were able to be verified that, like, yes, I can make this deal. We got to a price point that I thought was agreeable. I even had bid jokingly on the eBay thing. Like, no one's going to buy that on eBay. It was like listed on eBay so people in the world would be in the know of it. We talked, we agreed. I requested the contract, like the original RZA Silver Rings agreement from their representation to Martin. I requested that to go through it, and I talked about that on the All Out show, to make sure like what I wanted to do with the project could be done. Like, I don't want to buy it and just be like, it's my one of a kind art piece. I wanted to buy it and then make sure that I could start like a non-for-profit and fans could fund the like a GoFundMe. And when we hit the goal, which would be the exact amount of money that I put in to acquire it, then everyone can have it. But like, you know, it could be just here's disseminated for free, or if you funded X amount of money, you could receive like a CD copy, however, but it wasn't purchasing. So I need to see the original contract to make sure I could get around any potential gray area on whether it's sold or not. So in my schematic, it didn't seem like it was being sold to me. It's kind of like it was given, it was funded. The day that I anticipated on getting the contract from Martin and also being issued from his attorney, the contract for me for the sale, like for the transfer, was when it was announced that the FBI had picked him up. And then, I don't know if I ever went on air and said this, but then I started getting lots of phone calls from the FBI. Yeah. And then...
what was the nature of the phone calls?
When he was first locked up, I still was receiving these calls to broker the sale. And they say, like, a prisoner is not supposed to be able to benefit from the legal stream of commerce. Some of these calls had him on the calls from jail, and it's like clearly not supposed to have a cell phone. Some of the calls were from like an assistant. None of the calls were ever from his legal representation. So the FBI just kept seeing like activity on my phone. And that was odd because, yeah, I mean, they reached out, and then TMZ reached out and wanted to buy my emails. And I'm like, no, we're not doing that. I don't care how much money. Like, I'm just not putting myself in the crosshairs of Martin Shkreli and the world hates this guy, and FBI, and then TMZ putting out there that like FBI is contacting me regarding the sale. So it was never really publicly made known what happened to the album. Like, the government never said, we got it. You know, they said they wanted it, and they wanted the Lil Wayne album. I truly believe that when he tried to sell it to me, he didn't have it. I believe that. I believe that if the story is true of how he acquired the Lil Wayne, was it Carter 5 or 6?
Carter 5.
Or 5. So the story behind that was supposedly he bought a car from Birdman, and the CD was in the CD player.
Yeah, that's what he told me too.
Yeah, so that could be. I believe that people were hired to retrieve the Carter 5 from Martin Shkreli's residence or wherever. In the process of recovering the Carter 5, I believe they also recovered more than that, including the Wu-Tang album. Therefore, you've never heard Martin Shkreli. I mean, he's locked up, so he can't just like hold it up and be like, I still have it. You've never seen the government say they actually have it. Maybe his attorney has a copy. And that was another worry about me completing the transaction, even if they could have. I had spoken to Silver Rings for the first time ever. I mean, we knew who each other were for years and years and years through the Wu-Tang pipeline. This is the first time we actually spoke. One, he makes the point, I can make my own Wu-Tang album if I want. I mean, I made Almighty. I made the Ghostface album. I made many Wu-Tang albums. So therefore, yeah, clearly I know what budget it would take and how to piece it all together. The interesting part about the fans, like, fans think a lot of these albums are quote-unquote cut and paste jobs. And they feel a way about it. And they need to understand that that's just how it is now. Like, Wu-Tang Clan is not going to the studio together as a whole unless they're like on tour together. Or unless they're coming together for like an album where they have a label budget. Otherwise, when they're just making music to make music, Ghostface might lay a verse and send the file to Method Man. Then Method Man's going to do his part and say, like, that's how it is. Like, so fans get really caught up on the artistic side of what's organically made and what's not. But I never faulted Silver Rings for making this album in a kind of cut and paste fashion. I understand that he may have taken pieces from other potential projects. Like, I think he had, you know, the majority, I saw a track listing. The majority of verses on this project are supposedly from Kill a Priest. Now, Silver Rings and Priest were working on like a prequel to Heavy Mental style record. You know, a lot of Wu-Tang members thought that he was working on like another album, like another solo album for him. And his debut had everyone from Wu-Tang on it. So it's not, you know, out of the question that Raekwon or Dak or Method Man or whoever would have given verses and got paid for them. So their whole argument was like, had I known, and this can also tie into the licensing. An artist might be upset, had I known you were going to license this multiple times instead of just use it for like what the average person does when they pay for a verse, perhaps I would have charged you more. Okay, well, that's why I provide you with paperwork up front so you can read through the paperwork before you're signing. Like I get the paperwork done before any money changes hands. You know, you might hear the song and the artist might say, yes, I want to do this. But that's the initial phase, and then paperwork, then payment, then work. So members of Wu-Tang upset that, you know, we got paid, but had I known it was for a quote unquote Wu-Tang album, I would have asked for more versus, you know, and I get it. You can clearly there's a bigger budget for a Wu-Tang Clan project than say an Inspector Deck solo. The point is making sure the business is right every time. So, I don't know 100%, but I'm fairly certain that whatever Martin Shkreli was doing, trying to contact me to broker the sale from while locked up, probably added a few years to his sentence.
Wow.
I think he was given like 7 or 8. I think originally it would have been like 4 or 5. But
so are you of the mind that someone stumbled across this album and took it with them when they went to retrieve? That's what you're of the mind of? Yeah. Yeah. I've had different conversations with people around this project. I've always been under the opinion that the feds had it and they can't do anything with it because of...
If they have it, I would love for them just to, like, we have it. Like, here's an article from wherever, and this is a federal agent holding it. I would love to see that. Until I see that, I don't think they do.
Wow.
We just know that they went to his house to seize mad things. We don't know if they got the Lil Wayne record. We don't know what they really took from his residence to pay off the what do they call that? When you have to pay money back, it starts with an R. Long word.
I don't know.
It's kind of like reciprocity or something.
Sure.
So that's like the court will issue you have to pay back X amount of money and do X amount of time and so on and so forth. So clearly they're gonna have to seize as many assets as possible. I've never seen like a list of the assets seized. Usually you would, because those would go to auction.
Right.
Example, not as like wow as Martin Shkreli, but like the Young Buck IRS seizure, where they took like his whole they took his house and everything. I went to that auction, and the interesting thing was I'd worked with Young Buck before, and I recognized that like his manager was there and some other people. They were there specifically to buy back the things that he wanted, like his 615 chain, and maybe a plaque or 2 or something. Other than that, everything else could go. Now this is a great tie-in to my licensing business. One of the items for auction was 2 hard drives. If you got to the IRS auction, the estate sale, before like 10 a.m., you could ask it questions for an hour. From 9 to 10 was question time. Of that, once the auction starts, no questions. It's just next item up for auction. Go. Of course, my first question, is there material on these hard drives? There was material when we seized them. FBI or IRS protocol, we have to wipe them clean. There's nothing on there. Okay, so essentially someone's just gonna buy a hard drive, like walk into Best Buy for $30, $40, $50. Yes, sir, if that's how you want to label it, sure. It's a used hard drive, nothing's on it. Now, according to Young Buck and management, we're talking albums worth of material on there, from Buck, from featured artists. So in my head, I'm counting the verses. Okay, let's see if the average Young Buck verse goes for $3,000, and there's 100 of them, and there might be a 50-cent verse on there, and da-da-da. Okay, cool. I'm willing, if the material was on there, I'd be willing to go 50, 75 grand, because you have to pay cash at auction. So it's like, you can't be like, let me go to the bank, I'll be back. So they said, no, sir, there's nothing on there. The auction gets going. I bought up like 5 or 6 Young Buck plaques. I lost on his Louis Vuitton dual gun holsters. I really wanted that. But
how much did they go for?
$700, and I wasn't so much of a gunslinger back then and thought that it was necessary for me to have. But
how much did they end up going for?
Like $700. Cool, cool little thing to have. I bought his big screen TV, which we'll get to that, but it was too big to fit in my car. I sold it to someone else in the parking lot with all the plaques. So we get to the hard drives. Do I hear $100? These 2 dudes are going back and forth. They got up to like $4,000. And no one can say anything. And I'm trying to get the guy's attention, like, don't do it. Don't. They don't know. I'm just some guy. And no one knows. I mean, everyone's strangers there. And they just see me like, it sold for like one for like $4,000 and one for like $3,000. So $7,000 for something that's worth $60. And I think both the people just left. Like they found out there's nothing on it. They just left without honoring the payment. And then I'm sure, you're going to get hit from some kind of security agent or alphabet agent and so on and so forth. But yeah, that was bad. But I've done that in the past. I've gone to sessions and estate sales and things like that for producers, for labels and just bought up the rights. I gave away my Maserati in a business deal one time to acquire a catalog that featured Pharrell, Young Thug, CeeLo, Jay Dilla, Rick Ross, like big shit. Like I gave up the guy who owned it just happened to be looking at used Maserati Quattroportes. He wanted a black and tan. Mine was midnight blue and tan. I drove it to the studio that day. I'm like, I have the title at home. I'll give this to you. We'll work out the difference in cash or whatever else. We worked it out. And that's just an example of how I would acquire, you know, unreleased exclusives or buying catalogs if it's not directly from the artist itself.
You know, one thing that I always question about Martin Shkreli is that, you know, I haven't seen the paperwork, and maybe you have, but I never saw the paperwork that was part of the auction. I'd be amazed if they sold that record and the rights to the music also was transferable to the owner. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that never left RZA and Silver Rings and Wu-Tang. You know, I can't, because that's the only way I can see.
And that's the big thing for me. I had like, okay, he verified my money's real. That's step one. Now here's me demanding to see that contract that you're talking about. So no, I never saw it. Regardless if I had the money, regardless if I had the want to buy this record and free it and give it to the world, it's all based on what's in that document.
That's what I think, because I think that, you know, one, how can you guarantee that music won't be sold in the future and ruin the expression of how valuable this work of art is? And if the rights transfer with the sale, I mean, you can go buy a CD at the store. Doesn't mean you can go print up copies and resell it. You don't own the rights to the actual music.
Correct. Silver Rings told me there's a book. I have the book. I haven't read it. Like the story behind the One of a Kind album.
Silver Rings book.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you read it?
Yeah.
Okay. So then, like, you might be able to correct me if I say anything wrong here. I think he told me in the book there initially was a plan, like to sell the record to Shkreli, but have Shkreli on board for like PR endeavors, and to hype it up, kind of like the movie The Usual Suspects. But ultimately, Shkreli like went batshit on Ghostface and batshit against RZA and everyone else in the clan. Like, fuck you guys. Like, I got the record. Like, who needs you? You know, just talking mad shit. But supposedly in the book, they were supposed to sell 36,000 CDRs. So you buy the CDR for whatever the price point is. We'll mail you the CDR. You have it in the mail. Then when we hit that number, we release for free the album. So it's like we never sold it to you. So I'm inclined to believe, like with your train of thought, it was probably for a sale of the good versus the intellectual property rights that come with it.
And if that's the case, to me, I don't know what difference it would make for the feds to say they have it. They wouldn't be able to do anything with it.
I mean, eventually they have to sell it. Like, it's funny. I'm going to remember this word like as soon as we're done talking. To pay back whatever's owed in reciprocity, it doesn't do anyone any good just to be like, I have this Wu-Tang album. They can only make money if they sell it. Like, they can only get money from Young Buck if they sell Young Buck's the possessions of his estate. So it doesn't help settle a $7 million debt or whatever he owed that the government was saying they owed by just seizing the things and not commercializing off it. It has to be sold somewhere.
Man, this is a story that keeps being told, man.
Yeah.
I have a documentary film company reached out to me recently to interview me for something that they're doing on Martin Shkreli and Wu-Tang.
Well, shit, tell them to call me. I still got the text messages saved.
Oh, word, yeah. I mean, I still have my text messages too. I'll actually tell them to reach out to you. But the other one I thought that was real interesting was when the story behind the original script for How High 2.
Say again?
The story behind the original script for How High Part 2, the sequel.
Sitting right behind me right now.